welcome back to another episode of the F1 Garage. My name's Ted.
My name is Jared.
And we're bringing you some driver bios right now. We're going to be talking about the Alpha Tauri drivers, right, Jared?
I thought it was Alfa Romeo.
Oh, no.
I'm just kidding.
Okay,
classic
good.
Alpha joke, you know?
Woo! That really got me, Jared.
What happens when you got two Alphas?
Well, let's talk about the new Alpha first, shall we?
Let's do it.
Nick de Vries, starting from the beginning, he started his career karting at the age of 9 in 2004. He spent 8 seasons karting, which culminated in back-to-back FIA World Karting Championships. The following season, in 2012, when he was 17, he joined Formula Renault. Spent several seasons there. Until he joined GP3, as it was called prior to switching to Formula 3. He joined in 2016 at the age of 21. The following season, he joined Formula 2, where he spent 3 seasons racing there. His final season in 2019, at the age of 24, he won his first championship. Jared, can you tell me the 2 drivers who beat him in his first 2 seasons in F2?
I'm thinking it was Charles Leclerc first and then George Russell second.
You got it. Even in the order.
Wow, look at me.
Look at you.
Everyone look.
Okay, now look away.
Yeah, too much.
So the following winter, Nick joined Mercedes as a reserve driver and test driver, where he would kind of bounce around some other teams here and there, just to do some tests and act as a reserve driver. He also branched out at this point, joining several different racing formats. He joined Formula E with Mercedes, where he was a champion in 2021. And he raced in World Endurance Championship events with Team Netherlands from 2018 to 2022. I assume that now that he's an F1 driver, he's not racing in that series anymore. But while he was doing that, he was able to race the 24 Hours of Le Mans multiple times, which was a pretty cool thing.
Pretty sweet.
So bringing it up to the 2022 season for Nick, he makes his Formula One debut at Monza in the Williams, replacing, was it Albon that he was replacing?
Yep.
And he was able to secure 9th place and 2 points in his debut in a very bad car. So pretty impressive debut for Nick de Vries. Later that season, he signed with Alpha Tauri and began the 2023 season in the Alpha Tauri seat. Now there is some controversy surrounding his start date, and that has to do with some of the funding that he received in his karting career. So it's very normal for drivers in their early days in their karting to take funding from many different types of investors and investments. So Nick de Vries was no different. He borrowed money from a real estate mogul named Jeroen Schothorst. I don't want to claim that I know how to pronounce that name. That's just how I thought to pronounce it.
Perfect, I'm sure.
Yeah, thank you. And so over the years, Nick accepted around 250,000 euros from Mr. Schothorst. Now, the structure of the deal was so that if Nick had failed to make his Formula One debut prior to the 2023 season, going forward, 50% of all of Nick's career earnings in Formula One would go to Mr. Schothorst. So that's where the controversy lies, because technically Nick made his debut in 2022 for Williams, but Mr. Schothorst is deciding to sue Nick over that, because Nick is claiming that he doesn't need to pay out the 50%, because technically he did make his debut in 2022. Now, I don't claim to be a lawyer. I don't claim to know the entirety of the situation and the structure of the deal, but it sounds to me like Nick doesn't have to repay. I don't know. What about you, Jared?
Well, me being an authority on Dutch law,
okay.
I think I can speak to this pretty clearly. if you were to ask me just flat out, when did Nick DeVries have his F1 debut? It would be a very simple 2022 season. Like that is plain as day on that. But I'm sure Jerome is going to try all he can anyways. But
Yep.
also, that's a crazy deal.
It's a crazy deal.
50% of all of your income? Like,
yeah. Like it wasn't just winnings or anything like that. It was earnings. So any sort of like sponsorship deals, I would imagine, are part of that. Like, hey,
wild.
We may not know the specifics, but we're the two guys with microphones in front of them right now. So we have the authority to speak on this.
That's the credibility the internet requires. Also, so this he was making a bet on Nick taking a really long time, which is a very weird angle to take as an investor of like, I'm going to invest in you, but I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Like, what kind of investment is that? If any, I would have expected it to be the other way around of like, all right,
like
I'll
I'm going to
invest
believe in
you.
this
If you
kid a
get
little bit
in
more.
there, I want my money. Like,
which that makes it feel predatory to some extent because of the structure of the deal. Like the payout was, if you suck, you're going to pay me more. Like it's kind of,
or if you're just good enough after a long time.
yeah. Obviously, he doesn't suck if he makes it into F1. I misspoke. Right. But yeah, I feel like that was a little sleazy and predatory.
I think that's how it works.
I guess. One last thing I want to highlight about Nick. I kind of highlighted throughout just some of the ages that he was joining some of these various leagues, and I wanna point out his age compared to some of the others. So the year or the age for these drivers when they joined Formula 3, Nick DeVries was 21, Max Verstappen was 17, Charles Leclerc was 18. The age of their F2 championships, Nick was 24, Charles Leclerc was 20, and George Russell was 20 as well. The age of their Formula One debuts, Nick was 27, Max was 18, Charles Leclerc and George Russell were both 21. So it seems like he's a late bloomer, but the total number of professional racing championships for these drivers, Nick has 4 professional racing driving championships, Max has 3, Charles has 2, and George also has 3. So it seems like he might be a late bloomer, but he's a winner.
I mean, like he's won multiple competitive championships just behind the curve, which like if Nick's like, yeah, I'm fine waiting until I'm 30 to win a championship, I'm sure he'd be okay with that. So
yeah,
it remains to be seen if he's got it in him in this highest level, but I think that's what he's hoping for.
I would agree. Now tell us about Yuki.
Yuki, the other guy on the other side of the AlphaTauri garage, he's a young guy, actually younger than Nick DeVries, even though he's been with the team for going on his 3rd year now. So Yuki Tsunoda, born May of 2000, he's actually the first F1 driver to have been born in the 21st century. So
whoa,
fun little tidbit there. Yeah, I think we've got 1 or 2 others now at this point. He's from Sagamihara. I think that sounds better the second time.
Yeah.
It's a town in Japan, south of Tokyo. Yuki had exposure to racing from a really young age. His dad was kind of a hobby, semi-professional race car driver. He actually drove kind of a Japanese rally car type of deal and stuff. So Yuki credits that to a lot of what got him interested in racing originally. He started karting in 2010, so 10 years old. And then very quickly actually got sponsored by a Honda racing program. This was I'd say a pretty big deal. Honda is the name in racing in Japan. And Honda loves to and is very willing to put their weight and their pedigree behind drivers that are, they think, promising. So Yuki racing and karting gets his first opportunity in Formula 4 in 2016, but then goes full-time the following year, 2017. Formula 4 treats him well, but then he actually gets the opportunity to join the Red Bull program when Honda links up with Red Bull. So that comes in 2018. He enters F3 that same year. So you have to understand that the Japanese racing market is a huge deal. So Red Bull was so excited to have Honda on board, and Honda knows that it's such a big deal for kind of their local markets to have an actual Japanese driver representing their program. And so Honda would have been very insistent to kind of bring Yuki along and kind of bring him through this process, because they want a Japanese driver representing this historic Japanese brand.
And it seems like a perfect fit.
Seems like a perfect fit. He's got the big personality. He gets a lot of attention, but Honda's loving it. So Yuki, with the Red Bull Racing program, races in F2 for 2020 and actually finishes third. And then gets the call up to the big leagues. He joins the AlphaTauri team, the sister team of Red Bull there in the 2021 season. This is so exciting because not only is Honda creating engines for Red Bull, they're also doing it for the sister team, AlphaTauri. So they've got a Japanese driver and a Japanese powered car. Like the last Formula One driver from Japan was Camel Kobayashi from 2014. So at this point, it's been 7 years or so, 8 years since they've had a Formula One driver. There's been 21 Japanese drivers kind of throughout Formula One's history, but you can see this is a huge deal to have a Japanese driver driving, especially for a Honda engine there. Yuki's first year in F1, he actually at his first race finished in 9th place, so he got points in his first race. I guess Nick technically is the only other rookie we've got on the grid right now who kind of did last year.
Yeah.
I don't know. First race in F1, he got points. His best result, get this, 4th place at Abu Dhabi that year.
Whoa.
Yeah. So,
whoa.
You see those results, right? So, first race getting points, last race of the year, 4th place. Like, this guy must have had a really good year. Not the case. Pretty much about everything in between was less than stellar. It wasn't terrible showing, but was handedly beat by his teammate at the time, Pierre Gasly. Yes. He ends the season in 14th, which for a rookie in a midfield car, probably kind of where you would have expected them, I guess. But Pierre Gasly was having a stunner of the year there, so doesn't look quite as hot then. Next year, 2022, AlphaTauri team kind of takes another step backwards, unfortunately. Yuki Tsunoda alongside him finishes in 17th place on the season. That brings us to this year. I think 2 races in, it's hard to say exactly what we've got coming our way, but we're hoping for the best for Yuki in his 3rd season here.
Yeah.
Fun fact, Ted, Yuki is the shortest guy on the grid. How tall do you think he is?
Ooh.
Keep in mind, these are F1 drivers. Most of them are short.
That's true. I would be the perfect height for Formula One.
I think so too.
But I think Yuki's even shorter than me, and I think he's 5'4".
Close, 5'2". Even shorter.
Wow.
Not a big guy. Another important thing you have to understand about Yuki, he has probably the foulest mouth of all the drivers, known for rage and cussing, even over the radio. Sometimes the engineers have to come in and tell him, hey, pump the brakes, calm down a little bit, cool down. I think I've heard others suggest that he learned most of English hanging around mechanics and engineers and stuff, and so probably learned a lot of speaking English in those environments as well.
Yep.
If you were to ask Yuki what's the most important thing to know about him, though, I think he would probably say his love for food. When asked about why he loves Formula One so much, in addition to all the racing and competition and stuff, all of the food he gets to try in the different events and stuff, and traveling, trying food, and he aspires to be a restaurateur someday. So someday down the road, once we're super wealthy, we're going to be in Tokyo getting ready for the Japanese Grand Prix, but we'll swing by Yuki's restaurant first to get some
just to try it out. Just to try it out. There's a funny video that I saw recently where it was like an interview of all different drivers, and it's like, what's your dream? And all the other drivers are saying to be an F1 champion, to be an F1 champion. And then it gets to Yuki and he says, I want to open my own restaurant.
They're like, I mean, I guess that's technically what we were asking. We meant racing wise.
Yeah.
Or maybe they did mean that, and everyone else was just squares and one dimensional. And Yuki's like, I'm a man of taste. Yeah, I want to race. I also want to own a restaurant.
Yeah. Oh man, the man of many talents and mysteries.
All right, welcome back. It's time for us to hit some of the big talking points for past week here within the world of F1. Now, I say the world of F1 because what I want to start with is not actually about F1 drivers, at least not current F1 drivers. I got you there. I want to talk about NASCAR drivers. I want to talk about Formula One drivers that raced in NASCAR this past week at the Circuit of the Americas. So both Jenson Button, former Formula One world champion, and Kimi Räikkönen, another former Formula One world champion, both got to race in NASCAR last week at COTA. The Circuit of the Americas, where we have the U.S. Grand Prix later this year. I'm not normally interested in NASCAR, but you put some of our guys in there and I start getting more interested. So neither of these guys, they're not getting the most competitive spots. They're really there just to make people in Europe watch NASCAR a bit more. But it's fun nonetheless. And it gets us interested. So it must be working. Jenson Button, he had a pretty good showing, relatively speaking. He was finished kind of in the pack and stuff. Kimi Räikkönen, he actually completed the race this time, which is progress from his last NASCAR outing, in which he got caught up in like typical NASCAR mayhem crashing. This time he did finish, though, towards the back, because I think he still got caught up in some typical NASCAR mayhem as well. I don't know if you guys saw anything from the kind of race weekend at COTA. Anything that jumped out to y'all as like fun or interesting surrounding our guys?
Yeah, real quick. So my favorite thing about F1 previous F1 drivers being able to race in NASCAR is it keeps the hot debate going of which kind of racing is better, which cars are faster, which one's more competitive. It kind of keeps that debate hot and alive. And during the interview process with I believe it was Räikkönen, they were asking him about like what's the difference and what have you. And he's like, well, that's what it came down to. But then I love the kind of the explanation of, well, NASCAR is a little bit more loose. He was going in on how if an F1 car just merely touches another car, it's debris everywhere and it's a shit show. Whereas now he's just like, yeah, the rules are kind of like a little bumper car action here and there. You can kind of just get away with a lot more. But he also
which Kimi probably loves,
right?
Oh yeah,
right.
Finally some good reasonable racing to be done.
So, but that's what it came down to, Jared. He's just like, yeah, it's a lot of fun racing with these cars, as well as he kind of laid into the explanation of how these cars react differently to the tracks, which is kind of interesting. So, yeah, I mean the debate's still hot, and I always welcome NASCAR fans talking shit about F1 and vice versa. But yeah, it's always fun to hear the pros talk about it.
And what's I think especially fun about this is like Kimi has raced on this track in Formula One cars and in a NASCAR now too. So like he's in the same track, maybe a little bit different of a layout. I'm not exactly sure, but same track, two extremely different cars.
Yeah.
Do you guys think he could actually be good if he got into a competitive NASCAR? Do you think, like, Could he be competing with the big guns?
I think give him like the proper amount of time to train and get used to everything. I think why not? But it is.
I think it's
very
just a
different.
mental thing. I think it's a mental thing for him. I think he's just having fun. I don't think there's I don't think like there's any competitive like juice to like for him to like go for like a cup series or something like that, you know.
Sure. I'm sure he's competitive once he's in the race. But yeah, I think you're right. He's not trying to build a career out of this or something.
Yeah. Right.
I like to imagine someone just like invited him for a free Sunday and he's like, yeah, what are we doing? He's like, oh, I thought we'd just go for a NASCAR race. And Kimmy's like, all right. Yeah, I'd be down for that.
Kimi Räikkönen, after all. I mean, he was competitive in rally cars for the few years he took off of Formula One. He took a hiatus from Formula One, raced rally really well, founded a team, and then went back to Formula One again. He might have it in him. I think Sebastian Vettel says Kimi is the most naturally talented, just like gets in a car and knows how to drive it the best of anyone he's ever raced with. So that's high praise coming from a four-time world champ. Overall, though, it's fun to see our drivers elsewhere. We get them in IndyCar, some of those guys, and now we got some of them in NASCAR too. I love it. I'll eat it up all day. Marketing ploy worked.
You worked on Jared.
Yeah, you got me.
All right, so switching topics to the F1 news then. This is going to be a home race for McLaren driver Oscar Piastri. It would have been McLaren driver Daniel Ricciardo, but now it's Oscar Piastri. Isn't that great, guys?
Wow. We still got a home
Australia kept one.
Swapped him out, really.
Yeah.
So Ted, your shirt, I know for a fact, is not Oscar Piastri, but get rid of that signature there and just trade it right out and be the same shirt.
It could be. I am rocking the Daniel Ricciardo kit today. So, but how do we think Oscar is going to do at his home race in Australia? It's kind of a big event for the kid.
Well, considering I swapped him out of my fantasy team, I don't think he's going to do that good. But no, I'm sure he's got so much praise. It was a record-breaking 420,000 people at the Grand Prix last year. They're expecting even more people to come. So when there's an Australian on the grid at a home Grand Prix, you can expect people to come out for him. Whether or not that's Daniel, Oscar, it'll still be a good show. And I've some definitely praise that he'll do well, but with a bit of a, fingers crossed behind my back kind of mentality at the same time. So,
I mean, Daniel Ricciardo, he never had a good, solid race in Australia. Multiple DNFs, multiple struggling to compete. So, hopefully, it was a Daniel Ricciardo thing and not an Australian thing. But Oscar is probably going to struggle regardless of luck. The McLaren is bad luck enough right now.
Yeah, well, speaking of McLaren, it might be in for some better luck. Word is that they're poaching staff from other teams. So 15 new staff members have been added to McLaren in their aerodynamics departments, coming from Red Bull, Ferrari, and Aston Martin now. Guys, there was like a gold rush on Mercedes staff, like 5 years ago. Now it's not a Mercedes staff in sight. Nobody wants them, so
we're good. We're busy.
They have 200 sponsors and now 200 employees working on the car,
and yet they're still in last place. Hopefully, this means that somebody will be able to figure out some aerodynamic stuff there and make that car competitive again. Probably not for this year, though.
No. Aston Martin has proven this strategy to work. Aston Martin was finished 6th or 7th last year and are now confidently sitting in second place. And that's from poaching Red Bull employees. So
they're poaching from all these top teams, and it must be something to do with that budget cap, because we were talking earlier about how the salaries of the drivers aren't included in the budget cap. I don't believe the salaries of any of the actual team players, the head technical directors, the team bosses, I don't think any of that is contained in the budget cap either. So when you said earlier last week, they have money to spend, they'll poach from the best. They'll do whatever they can to.
The budget cap does include salaries, except for the top 3 highest paid team members.
Wow.
So
is
your
that
team
why McLaren
principal
got rid of their team boss the other week, or their team technical director? It was one of the two, and they hired 3 people in his place because they're like, we need all the help we can get right now. So I'm not sure if that's a sign of things to come.
Those big salaries either, but I do think there's a level of a bunch of these guys that are sitting in second and third place at the big teams going, all right, I need to set out and make a name for myself, and seeing lots of big paychecks that go along with it. So they're very willing to.
Yeah. Well, what could this hold for their futures, Dylan?
Well, let's think short term really quick, because we're still expecting a major package upgrade. Not quite this next race in Australia, but a little bit further down the line. We've been talking about this for weeks to come. I think since the beginning of the season, we've been talking about this upgrade, because Lando Norris puts it, this is the upgrade we should have started the year off with. And McLaren are just in a dicey position because basically these new rules and regulations were lately tacked on because of a technical directive that we'll get to in a bit here. Basically slowed down their development over the winter, and now they're kind of stuck where they're at, waiting for big upgrades down the road. But let's hope maybe this one can be something to put them back up in the fight with the top 5. No one likes to see a struggling McLaren more than Jared. So yeah.
Man,
but yeah, sign of good things to come today. Exactly.
Your McLaren flannel,
yeah,
Jared?
Seriously. Guys, they just signed their 47th sponsor today, the day that we're recording, which I thought it was a really interesting perspective to see. They don't even have a title sponsor. Unlike Ferrari or Red Bull, they have these major title sponsors. But when a team is struggling as much as McLaren is it wise to have one title sponsor giving you $50 million a year, or 10 $1 million sponsorship monies? Because if their sponsors start pulling out mid-season, if they're not doing well,
right there, just like you said,
I guess
Dylan,
it is a good kind of advantage for them to be taking on all of these small sponsors. But seriously, that car is just one of those billboards I see driving in Chicago. That's just like the whole truck is a billboard. It's not even like designed to be a truck anymore, similar to this F1 car. I'm just really hoping on that upgrade brings some big changes for McLaren, because I want to see Lando doing well. I want to see Oscar Piastri doing amazing in his home race, but they got to wait until their 4th Grand Prix to even see what the car should have been.
It also, to me, like that many sponsors, it kind of is a sign of desperation a little bit. Like, you know how like you see like sometimes across the world where they'll, like a Mini Cooper will have like a pharmaceutical brand on it or some stupid thing, where there's, like it'll, or there was like the Vegas, they'll have like sponsors on like taxis or some sort of thing, where it just seems like a company will go under if sponsors aren't helping them out. So it's kind of seems a little desperate for me.
A little thirsty.
Would you rather a few really good sponsors or a million little ones?
A few really good ones.
Yeah. Although, to be fair, I'd rather that than a few really bad ones like a lot of the other teams on the grid. So
that's true.
I'll take McLaren over Haas any day in terms of sponsorships.
It's still not BWT, right?
Right. At least they're not pink as well.
Pink and orange. Oh, that'd be bad.
Well, guys, someone who's not desperate anymore. We can't talk about McLaren or Australia without mentioning Daniel Ricciardo. Now, listeners, it's no surprise that we love Mr. Daniel Ricciardo so much. And the news that he was leaving the grid last season, at the end of last season, was a little upsetting, but we were quickly informed that he would be returning to help out Red Bull Racing, which is crazy. So we got the chance to hear news that he's returning home to Red Bull. But kind of what does that mean? So we saw for the first time this past week a promotion for the Australian Grand Prix. and it was all Daniel.
Ooh, goosebumps, man.
For some reason, it was all Daniel, not a racer, not a registered racer for the team, but because obviously it's the Australian Grand Prix, they had him in the dirt and they had him going across the entire country on like vast bridges with airplanes, and it was quite the spectacle. But I'm gonna be honest, guys, as soon as that promo ended, I was still kind of like brokenhearted and kind of a little weirded out a little bit, because
It was a little hollow.
It not only did it feel like a little overproduced and a little strange, just the way that it was filmed and whatnot.
It's a Red Bull propaganda video. That's really
totally,
what it is, you know?
totally. But it just made me ask questions rather than even get excited. But I mean, of course, there were times during the actual video of getting excited because he's doing donuts and whatnot. But regardless,
awesome, always.
I digress. So we just want to go through kind of what his role is now with Red Bull. And guys, first and foremost, before we get to the actual who is Daniel Ricciardo for Red Bull now that he's in Australia, how do we feel about him getting a free practice? Because he's gonna be there. We know that.
Ooh, he's got it, right?
What chances Perez eats a little too much whatever Australian food is the most prominent and popular that I can't think of right now, you know? What if he's eating too much? Yeah, koala, I don't know, you know, whatever, just a nice koala sandwich.
He's had one too many flat whites.
Some too much Fosters, you know, and has to take a day off. That'd be so great to see Daniel Ricciardo in full Red Bull racing gear, whipping around his home Grand Prix. There would be more people at the practice session to witness that. No, I can't see that. There will still be a billion people there on race day, but that would be the nice most attended
free practice session, though.
Yeah, for real,
man. And I would love nothing more than to see that. Yeah, not optimistic though.
Yeah.
Try wrestling that car seat away from Max or Checo right now.
Well, it will be probably our best chance to maybe see him doing anything super active within the garage, because with him being sidelined to Checo and Max, he is going to be doing a lot of just simulations. He'll be doing some some data testing, maybe even some races here and there, but it's not like a full-time thing. He won't be in the garage with the other drivers for the season. But yeah, what do you think, Dylan?
I think he's going to replace the Shaquille O'Neal role and be the trophy presenter this Australian Grand Prix. How cool would that be? He just rolls up on like a kangaroo at the front with the trophy in hand, you know, and then hops off and hands it to Max, you know, or whatever. But
he would love that.
Likely what he'll be doing is his primary job for Red Bull, PR, likable guy. That's what he was hired for, is to be a likable guy and make Red Bull.
He's not even the reserve driver for Red Bull. Like, he's there pretty much primarily as a data tester, like you were saying, Jeff, and doing some commercial shoots and making Red Bull look good and making those cans sell. So whatever they got to do. But
that's what it's all about.
They still have a reserve driver. That's Liam Lawson. You know, he did pretty good. He was actually Logan Sargent's teammate back in F2, to give you some perspective there. But so he's just the face of Red Bull right now on the off season.
Man,
pretty cool.
Pretty sick job.
That is a pretty sick job.
Still making Eddie's 24
still getting mad money.
Oh man.
All right, so kind of moving away from McLaren a little bit, we'll go into the surprise of the season, Aston Martin. And I just wanted to touch base off of just how good they kind of are with this season compared to last season. So real quick, from last season to this season on our last race in Jeddah, McLaren have increased their speed by 3.14 seconds on their average race speed. Aston Martin, sorry. What did I say?
McLaren has
lost
McLaren's
3 seconds.
Yeah, sorry.
That was wishful thinking on Jeff's part.
Still thinking about the love of my life. Yeah, Aston Martin. Comparatively to Ferrari, who have only increased like 0.01, so 1/100th of a second. So not looking
Mirrors
good
makes
for
no
other,
difference there for Ferrari.
but just to compare and to put some perspective into how much they put into the car in the off season. I mean, a year down the road, and they've increased their lap speed and their race pace by that much. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
One thing I heard recently about Aston Martin is because of how much, because they are a customer team of Mercedes, where they've bought their engine from Mercedes. They also have bought the gearbox and rear suspension that the Mercedes team has, which fun thing I want to talk about is, could they be faster if they had some of those custom parts even? Because like the Mercedes are really struggling, and everybody's talking about how Aston Martin is better than Mercedes. So are the Mercedes parts kind of holding Aston Martin back from even pushing beyond and chasing after Red Bull?
Wow.
And then that brings the question, how much longer does this deal last with Mercedes and Aston Martin? Sure, maybe they can still supply engines, but do they also need to supply the rear suspension and gearbox? Because maybe they'll change that kind of stuff out.
Yeah, when
So
does
maybe they'll look
Aston
for-
start supplying Mercedes with parts?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I think I think Mercedes also supplies Aston Martin the road cars. I think Mercedes supplies Aston Martin with most of their components as well.
Yeah.
So it's a very in-depth relationship there. I think if you buy an Aston Martin nowadays, it's all Mercedes parts on the inside with a pretty wrapping. Ted, I would take that the other way around though. I think the Mercedes stuff on the inside is good, and it's the aerodynamics on Mercedes that is holding them back. And so I think if we can see them, I say this like it's an easy thing. If Mercedes changes their strategy with car design and aerodynamics in particular, I think all of a sudden we've got a car just as fast as Aston Martin if they can get that right. And that's no small order.
Yeah, right.
But I think that's what we're looking at more so than Aston Martin leaving Mercedes.
Now, I don't know if this is legit or not, but did you guys by chance see the comparison of the engineers or the garage mechanics comparing Red Bull's floor with Mercedes's floor and just the design? There's a picture of Red Bull crew like lifting and walking with it down the garage, and then another one of Mercedes.
No, it was the Red Bull floor and the Aston Martin floor. And
was
they
it?
were noticing
No,
how they were
Mercedes.
so identical. And
Oh.
the joke was on the meme was, Mercedes, you need to look at this and understand it because they have it right. Because the two teams are doing so well are almost identical on the underfloor carriage. And Mercedes, I can't imagine what's going on under there right now. It's just,
pile of spaghetti.
I mean, that Aston Martin was designed by a bunch of Red Bull engineers.
That's true.
So it only makes sense that the cars
They're
look
very
the same. We're like
identical.
looking and we're like, oh my gosh, they're the same. It's like, yeah, it's because the same guys built both of the cars. They just did one and then left and built the other one.
Yeah.
Helmut Marko commented on it saying, man, it's really clear that those guys have a good memory. So
seriously.
goes
well, when
to
you work on something for 30 years, put it into practice, and then you get swapped to a different team, you're not going to just forget all you know. You're going to want to bring that over and just erase the name off the top ledger there and on your way. Good to go. But yeah, you guys want to also know something crazy? 10 years ago, it's already 2023, 10 years ago, we had one of the craziest driver changes in the history of Formula One. This guy, hold on, let me make sure I'm saying this right. Lewis Hamilton jumped ship from a McLaren, which he won his 2008 championship in. After struggling for 4 or 5 years and Red Bull kind of took over the reins, he made a jump to like the 5th or 6th best team, some team called Mercedes. That was 10 years ago already. And as we were kind of just pointing out, Fernando Alonso made one of the greatest moves in Formula One from a 7th best team, which is now the 2nd best team. So we just wanted to point out It has been done before. It's very rare, and it probably happens once every 10 years where a driver of that caliber just makes a right decision.
Mhm.
And as we glance over at Daniel Ricciardo's short-lived career and between Red Bull and Red Bull, he made
Right.
so many changes
Yeah.
and still ended up back at home base. But you got to give it to Lewis Hamilton. He made a life-changing, a career-changing move, and it has paid off so well for the guy. He's got 7 drivers' championships, like
Yeah.
insane.
Man, talk
Well, of
about
course, 6
timing.
of those were in Mercedes, but
Yeah.
one was in McLaren. But
And then
it's
also,
pretty
like, not
good.
only like did he pick an awesome team to join, he also jumped ship on a team that was plummeting down. So he kind of
Mhm.
hit the jackpot on both. You know, he left the team that had been at the top and came down, and joined a team that had been at the bottom and went up. I
Yeah.
need that kind of investing strategy. I could be retired by now.
Yeah, whoever's in Lewis
Yeah.
Hamilton's ear for those decisions, I'll give you
We're-
my phone number.
I'm listening.
Yeah.
Well, it was Nicky Lauda. He was actually the main contribution
That's
for
true.
why he jumped ship. And also
Yeah.
the seat that he took, Michael Schumacher's, after he
Mm.
retired. So that is a seat to fill and shoes to fill that I don't think we've seen the likes of since. So
Yeah.
maybe Max, but we won't go there too. It's only his,
Early.
Anyway, we'll end up talking about Max because, he's doing so well, but we just want to talk about a random theory that I had. And it's not so random given all of the trials we've seen now, 2 races in. Cars are not looking like they were from last year. They don't look like they're racing quite as close. And I think I have a reason as to why. You guys remember last year towards the second half, a lot of problems with porpoising. And a technical directive was brought out, TD039, basically implementing ride heights and how these things must work for drivers to be safe. And what in turn that did was completely change the philosophy of almost every car we see on the grid now. Cars run about 15 millimeters higher than they did last year. And what in turn this does is move away from the downforce that they get from generating the ground effects from underneath the car to similar to we had before the regulations changed, where now there's so much more outwash from the sides of the car, and there's more loopholes for the engineers to build onto the car, that the cars aren't even following closely anymore because they're not adhering to the original set of regulations. That technical directive, in theory, ruins wheel-to-wheel racing for this year. And we've seen that now in Saudi Arabia. Perhaps that's a specific track because it's so narrow, the cars can't really follow anyway. But you guys remember last year we saw like 7 different instances of 5 cars battling together, like wheel to wheel, neck and neck. What I'm afraid of is that the cars that were designed over the winter, by the first race, we're going to basically know who the championship winner is because of how it was designed. And with the new budget cap set in place, that means theoretically another team could not outdevelop another car because they've spent almost all their money on the original chassis to begin with. Is this a fear of what's to come now that there's budget caps, guys? Or is there still hope for other teams like McLaren to develop their car throughout a season? That might be too much of a question to answer at once. So please,
I feel like it's a new era. So if teams can't get with the program, they're out. And let's bring in more teams. Porsche's coming in. Come on. It's more better teams. More better teams, Papa John's, better people, better ingredients. Let's go.
Actually, weird that you brought it up, but there is news on Porsche this week, but they are not joining F1. Yeah, they've officially pulled out of even trying to be an engine manufacturer. But yeah, still in that does bring up you brought up a good point about it just being about whichever team got it right at the beginning of a new regulation era. Especially with the budget caps, like that does bring all the teams closer together in terms of what they can spend, but it makes it harder for teams to catch up in the new eras. So that just might be the new F1. Yeah, I don't know.
I think I feel like this has kind of been the case though. Like Formula One for many years, maybe forever, has been engineering first, and then driver and strategy second and third, right? Like whoever's got the best car almost always wins. It's very rare that we see a driver that's able to beat a team with a better car. And so maybe this slows down the development process. I think in the long run, it brings them together still, but years down the road, not next year or two. I think we will still be seeing a very common whoever shows up with the best car wins at the end of the season.
So, question actually that I just thought of. So the budget cap wasn't in place until the 2021 season, or was it the 2022 season?
Yeah,
2022, I believe.
2022. So how much could Red Bull spend on the development of this new era's car prior to the budget cap forming into place?
$300 million.
Yeah.
Now it's like 135 or something like that.
It's the
So
same
maybe
reason
it
Haas
does
didn't
level
spend any
off.
money in 2020,
Right.
because they were putting all of it towards that next year's car. But that's when the budget cap, like you said, locked in. So
Yeah.
I think teams have been designing that car that we saw last year for the first time for 4 or 5 years. Let's be honest. New regulation means a lot more money and effort goes into these new cars. I'm just worried by next year or 2 years away, we're just going to see 10 teams running Red Bull cars, which sure would make everyone awesome. Neck and neck. I think ideally that'd be the best. But like we were saying, if you've got millions of dollars in infrastructure, you're still going to do better than a team like Williams, who's trying to, you know, cut a steak with a butter knife, versus Mercedes has like a hacksaw, like full chains, you know, like they'll get it done faster, better, more efficiently. Maybe not with the steak scenario, but
yeah, I think you're right, Dylan. The budget brings the teams closer together, but doesn't put them on par with one another. Because even though they can spend the same amount on developing the car, Mercedes already has a massive infrastructure that Haas or Alfa Romeo or Williams, they can't catch up to that infrastructure that Mercedes has. Also, Mercedes, with the amount of revenue they're taking in right now, can also afford to pay their drivers more. They can afford the best kind of lead technical designers and stuff. So the teams with the most money will, I think, remain the teams at the top. But I think the idea is 10 years down the road, and I really think that this is how long that takes. The teams towards the bottom and the teams on the top are closer. One's still going to be above the other, but the gap is not as wide. And you might get a top tier midfield team that's able to beat up the big guys on an off year or something. But I think the big guys will be remaining the big guys for a while to come.
Okay, here's an off thought. Is there any reason it would be more advantageous in McLaren, especially in their scenario, for them to stay in 10th place just so that next year they have the most amount of aerodynamic wind tunnel time? But on the downside of that, what happens when you have 150% of the aero time? In the first race, you envelop the craziest new idea, and by the second race, the top team just says, nice idea, I took a picture, now we're going to put that on our car. Is there still, like, you know, a benefit to having more aero time, even if by the midway point another team can just steal that invention without having to put any development time into it? Or is it, it probably has so much more to do with the philosophy of the car.
I think it has to do with the tweaks you can make over the course of the year even. So like if McLaren have the base, this is kind of what we're seeing with Red Bull, like they have the base. So any improvements that they're making, they're adding to the base, where like if a car, like if Mercedes just steals Red Bull's side pod designs, they're going to have the Red Bull base, but the Red Bull's advanced beyond that still. So like that's where I think having more wind tunnel testing time can be a benefit as you're bringing upgrades. So, but I just don't know that they would do that. I feel like at this point they still want to try to fight to not be in last place. I think that'd be more embarrassing or more devastating for them.
I don't think the wind tunnel time's worth it, because at what cost, right? Losing Lando Norris, because Lando Norris is not going to stick around in a team that is throwing seasons to get more wind tunnel time. How long are you keeping your sponsors around if you're wallowing away at the back of the grid? And then also, what better way to know if the upgrades and development you're doing works than seeing them on a car on a track instead of hypothesizing in a wind tunnel? So As much as I'm sure the wind tunnel time is a asset, I don't think it's enough of an asset to justify throwing a season. Unless you're Haas with such limited resources that it's like we do one or the other. I think there was a case to be made. I actually would credit Haas for making that decision, but I don't think McLaren with the resources they have are going to make that same decision.
Yeah. Agreed.
Cool.
Guys, do we want to talk about our predictions for Australia?
Ooh,
Sure.
the land down
I do.
under.
Jeff, you do?
Crikey.
I don't know. Who knows? I don't care anymore, man.
You'll find out.
All right. Well, if Jeff
do you
doesn't
know?
care, who wants to go first?
I would love to go first.
All right, Jared. It's all about you.
It's always all about me, except for right now when it's all about my predictions.
Oh, okay.
Who will win the Australian Grand Prix? This is also tied with who will surprise Charles Leclerc.
Oh,
No, you psycho.
you son of a
Gonna link
bitch.
it up.
Jared's a psycho.
Ferrari's going to link it up. Leclerc's going to look phenomenal.
Question then, is he going to dominate as much as he did last year?
Another grand
Ooh.
slam, hit it
No.
out of the park. No.
No, he won't be that good. Let's be realistic, guys. Who will struggle? Mercedes is going to look terrible. They're going to be not the past week. They were kind of nicely sat away from all the midfield, away from big cars. I think they're going to be fighting the midfield this week. Who will? Okay, my wild. Oh, okay. Who will surprise Charles Leclerc? You can see what I mean. They're connected.
Yeah. Okay.
Wild card. Oscar Piastri is going to get his first Formula One points at his home race.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
I like that wild card.
Yeah. Fantasy team members exact position. Now this one I'm struggling with. I did Max Verstappen first week, Lando Norris the second.
Gotta pick what do you got left? Russell.
Where's Russell gonna finish?
I think I'm going with Pierre Gasly, and it's going to be in 8th place.
Okay. I like the
Solid.
confidence.
Yes.
I like the confidence. All right, I'm gonna go next.
Ted,
next.
what you got for us? What you got?
I think that Max Verstappen's gonna win. Just
boring.
The way it is. I know. Who is going to struggle? I think AlphaTauri are really going to struggle. Like, I think they're just going to finish dead last. A couple of hot
struggle
heads.
even by their standards.
Yeah, struggle by their standards.
And that's because we did the driver bios this week. Went to the guys.
It's the jinx. It's a jinx. No, but so Dylan and I were driving around this track yesterday. We were playing in F122, and we hate this track. This
why?
It's
what's so bad about it?
It's not a fun driver's track.
It's a fan track because it always has so much excitement, drama. But the track itself is just one big mistake generator. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Like, all the corners are there to catch you out, and they're all there to cause an increased excitement and drama. And it's not a very flowing track. Like, there's a lot of breakups and weird places that are breaking. But I enjoy watching it because there's always so much action. And
I think we spent
it's just one of those tracks.
We spent like maybe a quarter of our time on that track in the gravel pits. So that's what, so I just think with those hot heads on this track, it's going to be a struggle fest for them. Who's going to surprise? I also think it's going to be Charles Leclerc. I'm not going to go as far to say as he'll win it though, but I think he'll get a podium. He does well at this circuit. My wild card is that Sergio Perez is going to DNF though. Red Bull's had it together for too long. I think there's going to be a crack. I think there's going to be a crack this weekend. My fantasy, I'm going to predict that Lance Stroll will finish in 6th place.
Wow. All right. Good for Lance.
Solid.
6th place.
And good for Ted.
All right. Dylan, go next.
All right, who will win? We're going to go ahead and autofill a Max Verstappen in right there, just because that's also my wild card. I'll get to that. Who will struggle? The fans. This Max Verstappen domination has just been too much, guys. Not that I am a fan at all. I don't have a holy relic right here with him or anything, but also low-key asterisk the Haas team. I don't know why they've never had good luck in Australia. They've had multiple back-to-back years of pit stop kind of problems, wheels falling off their cars. So either it's the team at this place or it's the place with this team. It's just something doesn't vibe. And I'm just going to say the Haas team, just blanket that. Who will surprise? Lance Stroll. I think he is finally healed, finally recovered from that double broken wrists biking accident and broken toe, allegedly. And I just feel like he's going to be in full form. He's not going to be slipping for basic stuff. And if he actually finishes full form,
to be in full
which is still like 1% of Shaggy's full form. But at the same time, I think he's going to do a bit better this weekend. My wild card is a Max Grand Slam, which also ties into why the fans will struggle, because he's just going to do so well, I guess, Fantasy team members prediction, we're going to say, and because I made a fantasy pick here last time, Alex Albon, 10th place.
Oh,
let's go.
Is he gonna go for a pit stop?
Just one within one lap, it'll either be the first lap or the last lap, but it's gonna happen.
He only needs one
or the other.
Yeah,
exactly.
I love it.
It's a one-stop strategy.
Brilliant. All right, here we go. Who's gonna win the Australian Grand Prix? Alonso.
Fernando. Nice.
Mr. Fernando Alonso is gonna do that. He's gonna do it big. He's gonna do it right in front of your face. Gonna struggle. I agree with Haas, with Dylan, not with Haas, but yeah, I agree that the Haas is gonna struggle. They've already predicted it too, so I agree with them. Who's going to surprise us? Sonoda. He's going to get 9th place or 10th place. He's gonna have a great day. Don't know why. It's going to be a hard course, it's already a hard track for passing and everything. So hopefully he qualifies well. Wild card, Red Bull double DNF. Karma's coming for them. It's coming hard. It's going to come all over their face. And
this is the second sexual innuendo. First one innuendo. Second, just blatant.
They're going to get it. Max Verstappen was a biggity bitch last race. He deserves to get it. He's going to get it good. And it's going to happen. And Checo's going to be upset. He's also going to get it.